Dealing decent damage in Hypixel Skyblock can be extremely complicated, especially considering how many stats there are within the game. However, today I will be going over the fundamentals of how you can deal more damage no matter what stage of the game you are in. This guide will not involve you spending hundreds of millions of coins, but will instead focus on teaching you exactly how damage is calculated and the ways you can utilize the current systems to maximize your numbers, especially for early and mid-game players. My name is Derailious, and let's get started. Starting off, focusing on melee damage, there are a few stats that we will be working with today. Notably, they are base damage, strength, and crit damage, as well as crit chance to a lesser degree. The formula for dealing melee damage looks like this. Base damage is exactly what it seems like. If your sword deals 40 damage, it will be in this section. Strength and crit damage are also 1-to-1 directly pulled from your stats. Additive multipliers include many enchantments like sharpness, as well as your combat level, and multiplicative multipliers include items like the Tarantula Talisman. Bonus modifiers include some more niche items and enchantments such as the Soul Eater Ultimate Enchantment. For the purposes of this video though, we're just going to be looking at the sections related to base damage, strength, and crit damage in order to make this easier to understand. Once we've simplified the formula down, we basically have three different multipliers that work in tandem to create your damage value. Base damage itself is probably the least relevant of the three to us, as it's inherent based on whatever weapon you're utilizing, and isn't easily increased in other ways, other than a few pets for specific weapons, and that's not really in the scope of this video, and also won't make your damage significantly higher. Essentially, this is just a game of maximizing your crit chance first such that it reaches 100%, and then maximizing your strength and crit damage. However, there are major incentives to keep the values of strength and crit damage as balanced as possible. For example, let's imagine two scenarios. In the first, you have 600 strength and 600 crit damage. In the second, you have 300 strength and 900 crit damage. If you multiply out both scenarios with the formula, in scenario 1 you have a total damage multiplier of 49, but in scenario 2 you have a total damage multiplier of 40, a significant difference even though both scenarios have the exact same number of total stats. Before we continue, I just want to say, please make sure you like and subscribe down below if you're enjoying this breakdown thus far, and use code RAIL on the Hypixel store for 5% off your order, as it helps support the channel a lot. Thank you, and let's get back to the video. Generally, these hypotheticals should teach you a couple lessons. Firstly, you should prioritize maximizing your crit chance until it's at 100% for general gameplay. Once you do this, you've effectively opened up another multiplier that will always be activated, rather than just relying on RNG to get a critical. Secondly, while it's important to keep stats balanced, at lower levels, don't over-focus on keeping the numbers exactly the same. If they're within a range of 50 to 100, you're fairly close to the maximum possible damage for your stat number, and you should be prioritizing increasing both values whenever possible, as that will lead to greater damage values in general. For my personal recommendations, the most important aspect of your build, aside from your weapon, frankly, is your Power Stone, and by extension your magical power, as they both provide a very large amount of crit damage and strength, more so than even your weapon or armor if you invest into the system. In terms of damage, there are multiple options here. Hurtful is generally considered the best Power Stone for day-to-day usage, but Shaded is a good substitute. If you need other options, Scorching and Forceful aren't particularly bad either, however they will be slightly less efficient. Based on this, you should also prioritize gathering accessories, as well as recombobulating them whenever possible, and if you need further optimization, take advantage of the tuning system available within Maxwell's menu, and further balance your stats. In terms of your weapons as you progress throughout the early game, getting access to the Raider Axe is a great starting point, following that up with the Void Sword from the end. If you're going to use the Void Sword, also make sure to pair that with the Ender Armor and the Ender Equipment. After this, you can then go for things like the Aspect of the Dragons or the Blade of the Volcano. Do keep in mind though that they do have higher combat requirements. Also, there are a bunch of other options to choose from, especially if you're not on an Iron Man profile, and it really comes down to what works for you as you play. For weapon reforges, Spicy is a fairly strong early game basic reforge, and in terms of advanced reforges, there's Fabled and Withered. Armor is also incredibly important for further increasing your damage. As an early game player, the progression path tends to revolve around getting access to Glaciite armor from the Dwarven Mines, and then following that up with End armor and equipment. Past that point, Dragon armor, various dungeon setups, and eventually Crimson armor are possibilities as you move into the mid-game. In terms of armor reforges, Fierce and Pure are not bad as basic options, and Ancient and Renowned are excellent advanced reforge options. Finally, enchantments that go on weapons are also extremely important, and I recommend getting all the ones you can if you're using a weapon for any extended period of time. Oh yeah, one more thing. In terms of pets, you have various options here, including things like the Enderman pet, the Tiger pet, Lion, Wither Skeleton, Skeleton, and Griffin, all of which have different levels of usability and promote different playstyles. This is really up to you and what you want to experiment with. Aside from melee damage, there is also ability-based damage, which is generally easier to understand with multipliers related to ability scaling and intelligence. However, there is no balancing act in order to maximize ability damage. You are essentially searching for intelligence, ability scaling, and base ability damage wherever you can find them. In terms of weapons and armor, there are fewer overall early game options for you. From dungeons, items like the Dreadlord Sword and the Dark Goggles are good starting points, as well as Wise Dragon Armor and eventually Aurora Armor for making decent setups. As you move into the mid-game, there tend to be more options for you for a mage player, and there are many different things you can utilize from that point. Testing out different builds is highly recommended, and in terms of power stones and reforges, I personally recommend things like Sighted and Bizarre, reforges such as Wise, Necrotic, and Loving for armor, and using items such as the Dark Goggles as they provide ability damage as a base stat. In terms of pets, Sheep is probably the most usable for early game mage play. Overall, I completely understand that this video was probably a lot of information all at once, but damage in Skyblock is just one of those systems that requires a decent amount of time investment in order to properly understand. I hope that by giving you the formulas directly that you will be able to utilize them within your gameplay, as well as when you're considering upgrading your setup, which I recommend doing whenever possible. I hope this guide was helpful for you, and if it was, please make sure to like and subscribe down below, and leave a comment with your thoughts, or if you have any questions. At the end of the day though, my name's Derailious, thank you so much for watching this video till the end, and look to the future fellas, I'll see you then.